order the Monday, March 20th meeting of the River Falls. This meeting has been properly notified, and we will now stand and begin our meeting with the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any visitors or delegations who would like to address the board this evening? All right, then we are going to move on to informational items, and the first one is a spotlight on education from West Side School. So I know that Chris is here, and he tells me that he brought some friends along. So the floor is yours.
All right, good evening, everybody. Chris Kamrath, principal at West Side, and I am fortunate enough to have two great people on with me tonight, Amy Everson, our counselor, and Jean Kinney, our literacy coach. And 3 hours or so. You want me to come up? Yeah. All right, sorry about that. And we're about 3 hours or so off the press. I'm excited to announce that Amy Everson is the award winner from UW River Falls as the outstanding essentially the outstanding collaborator of counselors and helping new counselors get into the field, awarded by them. So I'm very proud of her for her work, and it certainly shows in some of the things you'll see tonight too. So I'm trying to hit the button. That would be useful, wouldn't it, here? So the part where it says on? Yeah. All right, so we're gonna talk about tonight is the big rocks at West Side, and so I show the picture of our big rock out front, which is certainly a staple of West Side. But each year I try to identify the big things that we're really focusing on, because it's impossible to have an endless list of big rocks and things you're trying to accomplish in a year, and certainly when you see this list of 5 things tonight, please don't think it's the only things we do. But if you don't have any priorities, nothing's your priority. And so this year, 5 big rocks that we'll kind of go through tonight. The big rocks that we worked on at West Side this year and are continuing to work on is our mission statement work, our behavior work with students, our character education program, collaboration, and professional growth. And there's an odds and ends one at the end of just a couple quick things I wanted to share as well. Our big rock number 1, the mission statement work. This is something that we've really put a lot of energy into. We had a previous mission statement that we believe to be roughly 10 years old, and it was a good, solid mission statement, but I've met no one who's been able to memorize it because it's so thick. And I was really, quite honestly, struck last year when Mr. Chapin came over to talk to our soon-to-be middle schoolers, and his mission statement was 3 words. At Meyer Middle School, we want to do this, this, and that. And that I still remember those 3 things, and I've heard it once. And so that really inspired me of where we want to be. And as I sought feedback from our staff this past summer and early in the fall, we agreed that was something we wanted. We wanted clarity. We wanted focus on exactly what we were trying to do. And we started that with Learning by Doing, a text that's written by the DeFores and company, and it's a wonderful text. So we worked through our building leadership team and kind of built a foundation around that work before we just jumped into it. I met with Mark, also did some other professional research kind of on it, and we really worked through this year. It's taken longer than I anticipated, but that's been okay. It's been wonderful conversation of kind of formulating 3 drafts, then narrowing it down to 1 draft, and hopefully this Friday I anticipate we will have a final edition, whether it's this or possibly a word added to it. But our draft, as it's on the board there in front of you, is West Side Elementary is dedicated to nurturing a learning community, developing character, and growing together. So we're very proud of that and looking forward to, as it's finalized, sharing it out with staff and working with staff, students, families. It'll be staff is aware of it, but families and students. So proud of that work. Both Amy and Jeannie were a part of that leadership team. Anything you want to add on that? Okay. Behavior work, that's something that since I've come to Westside, this is my 5th year, we started a behavior committee and really worked around that focus. This last summer, we met shortly after school was out, which was really helpful. Everything was fresh. And we had created a new roadmap, which is the form that we work with students on when they're not following expectations. And that was something we really wanted to get out there and educate our staff, our students, and our families on. And so we put a lot of work into that in the fall. And I think it's been a foundation well laid, really working to build the capacity about what a roadmap is. Our previous document was called the plan, and we found that really had a negative context around it and often put a wall up when you're trying to work with the students. Our plans, or our roadmaps essentially have 4 things that we're asking kiddos. What happened? How were you feeling when it happened, and why did it happen? Who did this impact? And that's a really powerful question. It's much beyond just, the kid I hit. Well, yeah, you impacted them, their parents, because we likely called their parents to talk about it too. You impacted yourself, your parents, the staff involved, and so a lot more people than just yourself, which is really what we want kids to understand. Their actions impact a lot of people. And then finally, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to move forward, both in fixing this, and so doing work with you and the other student and trying to correct, kind of mend that relationship, but also on the other side, what are we going to do in the future? What's going to happen differently the next time somebody calls you a name? What will we do instead of hit them? And so that we've invested a lot into this year. And I'm just highlighting a few of the things on. I realize it's a pretty thick list, but I'm told I don't have 2 hours tonight. So that's something that we're really proud of, that work. We've also used the data from those, which has been really helpful. Our behavior committee meets every month and goes through that data. I share that data out with our building. It's not a secret in terms of where are roadmaps happening. Are they in the hallway? Are they at recess? Are they in the bathroom? And then we use that when we do our reteaching. We use that with our staffing. We're able to make adjustments based on that. It'll be really helpful in the years to come when you can compare 2022 to 2023 to 2024 and kind of see what adjustments may be needed. The other thing I'll let Amy quick talk about is something we've piloted this year is our SABRS work. And that's been across the district at 4th grade, and found that to be really helpful in supporting students, and not just in terms of behavior, but in social emotional as well.
Yeah, okay. So the SABRS assessment is for both students to take a self-assessment, and then also their teacher to do a very similar questioning. And it's pretty minimal. There's 20 questions, and it just gives us an overall of some academic behaviors, social, and then also emotional data that the students report, how they're feeling about themselves, and then also the teachers, how they're observing the student in the school environment, and then we kind of compare those to see what the needs are. Are these students needing maybe a support group for resiliency? Are they needing a connection in the building? Do they not feel connected with somebody in the building? And then teachers, are they seeing, some of those concerns? Are they similar? Are they different? So right now it's a pilot year for the whole district, elementary-wise. We've targeted 4th grade as a district to kind of look at those students and staff kind of perspectives and see just what we can get from that and how we can help and support those students a little bit more. So it's been really good.
And our next big rock was character education. We'll let Amy
Hi, me again. All right, so our character education, this year we introduced a 2-year theme, and it is Wild About Character. So we'll have that for this year and next year. And so animals, really big, a big hit with our kids. They're really liking that. So that's been fun. We're continuing to do some of our things that we've done for many years. Our character assemblies each month to introduce a new trait and get our kids energized about that trait. It's really the education piece of it at that point. Using pride groups, which is pairing 2 different grade levels together and meeting monthly to learn more about that character trait, but also build connections building wide. And so that's been great to continue. During COVID, we had some more virtual options, and so we're back in person. And so feels really good to be connected like that again. Our Character Council, which I'm a co-facilitator for that, we have close to 60 students this year, which is a big group to manage, but it's been really fun. And we're using, kind of bouncing down, we're using a curriculum that some of the other buildings in the district are using, Character Strong, during our Character Council time to energize our students, educate them about the character traits, but then also kind of kick off some of our activities that we're doing during our meetings. So that's been a great connection. We're using Character Strong during our pride groups as well, a bit during some of my counseling lessons. And so that's been really fun to use that in different areas of our school to kind of introduce that and have our students learn from a curriculum that's character-based. We changed to having virtual announcements this year to kind of engage our students in a different way, and it's been a really positive thing. I'll let Chris maybe talk more about that one. And then our principal for a half-hour essay contest that Chris does as well, and our students love that. They really take ownership of that, of being principal for the half hour and walk around, and they feel really good. They're really excited about it.
I go to Starbucks, it's great.
You leave, yeah. And so character education in our building is like you said, one of those strong pieces that we're doing really some great work on, and we're really excited to keep moving forward with that.
And something I'll just mention on is our character ed committee is one that meets every month, and actually we're meeting oftentimes twice a month right now. There's such passion on that team. Like, I really enjoy working with the team. They're one that is happy to meet multiple times in the summer. Designing a new shirt together was fun because there's so many ideas and energy involved. We survey the students to get their ideas on the theme, and it's just a neat. There's such passion for it. It's so fun to lead a group when you're just as into it as they are. And the thing that I'll quick add on is when she talked about Character Council, the 60 kids, that's just 4th and 5th grade. There's just that many kids that have a passion for it, and I think we'll just continue to see that number rise, and credit to them for making it so fun for kids. Our next one, and I'll kind of jump on, let Jeannie talk a little bit about it too, but collaboration is something that our district has as a priority for good reason, in that we've talked a lot about it as part of the strategic plan, and I won't dive into things that we've talked quite a bit about here. But one thing that we've done at Westside is Jeannie and I is scheduling out when we join teams every Thursday morning, and we rotate through the teams that we join. And I have found that, and I think Jeannie has too, to be such a beneficial thing in working with our teams, very specifically going through different data with different groups, and just have found that to be a really well-focused time. So I appreciate your allowing us to do that, and I'll let Jeannie talk a little bit more about that as well.
Again, I'm Jeannie Kinney, and I'm the literacy coach at Westside, so thanks for listening. Chris and I've been really excited to collaborate with our teachers each week. At the beginning of the year, it might have been something like looking at our FASBridge, our benchmark screening, and helping teachers dive into that. It might be something more informal, maybe an assessment that they're working on as a team. So as we meet, we ask them what kind of support they need from us. And that may lead into answering some questions, or it might lead into a coaching cycle where we then have professional conversations and we might do some co-teaching together. So Chris also meets with specialists, and I think that's it for collaboration.
And the next big rack, the last one, has been professional growth. And this is something that we've really tried to be intentional with. We generally have staff meetings twice a month, with some unusual months, Thanksgiving and Christmas, where there's well, maybe only one, but trying to really help staff grow in those meetings and leverage those and the resources we have to help our staff grow. And so one thing I do 3 surveys a year of our staff to just kind of gauge ideas from them from the Big Rocks and how they're going. And one piece you really wanted to focus on is hitting staff in areas that they really would like support. And so the bullet points you see before you, there are areas that were identified in last spring that we would like additional support in: behavior strategies, collaboration, love a little bit more on EL strategies. And that, as we kind of had our needs in that area grow, became a little bit more of a necessity as well. Health training, literacy, science, problem solving specifically within math, and just strategies to work with kids who might be a little bit more advanced, and then tech. And so those are things that we were able to integrate. Some of these were things that I went out and found externally, since as rigor and collaboration was a piece that I did some work on. But some of these were finding resources we already had. And so it's been really, really good feedback from staff and having staff meetings focused on this rather than letting the time go on to different topics. And so I'll let Jeannie talk a little bit about, because she's helped lead a book study and done a wonderful job with it, with kind of 2 groups within our staff.
Yeah, so I alluded to this a little bit earlier, but one of the things we did is we had a book study, and then we met with those grade level teams, and then they used that information to guide some intentional teaching surrounding that student learning. So it was a really nice sequence for them to dive deeper in each time we met. One of the other things I just wanted to highlight is when Chris brought in our EL team, they really appreciated that visibility and that communication, and it really leads to some deeper collaboration within the EL teachers and our grade level teams. And then our teachers and our staff really appreciated getting to know them. We have some new teachers on that team. And so that even though those topics there, you may notice them to be kind of varied, it really led to deeper collaboration between each of those teams: the EL team, the behavior support team, the literacy team, the science. So each of those times led to more time for teachers to work together, which helps our students in the long run. So thank you.
One thing, too, that we really tried to focus on is having this growth be for everybody, including our support staff. And so one of the things to help with that is I would intentionally invite support staff to these meetings, and to all of them, but really specifically to ones that I knew they had an interest in, so behavior and things that we knew were very applicable. And the other thing is for some of them, inviting them to our monthly para meetings, and that's been really helpful. McKenna Cook came and did a session on EL strategies, and it was just, even for staff paras who don't work, they found those strategies so helpful. Right before break, we had Abby Maziai come and talk about questioning strategies to use with students. And again, really helpful. Jeannie came to 2 meetings, and just really helpful to help our support staff. So inviting them to meetings, but also bringing things specifically to meetings with them. The last bullet point there is adjusting the way that I did observations. And so last year in seeking feedback, just trying to make it as meaningful as possible. And so I now have a meeting with the teacher before an observation. I observe them twice consecutively, so within anywhere from 2 days to a week, depending on the ebb and flow of the week. And then we meet again after. And it's really helpful to have those kind of conversations focused. And I often will do teams at the same time. And so we're able to kind of, I have a vast experience in that week in first grade or whatever grade it may be. And so that's been a really helpful process, both for me and I believe for the teachers as well. It's obviously the goal. So those are our focus areas in professional growth. Just a couple quick things. The virtual announcements, you can see those. Well, I'll talk about that in a second. Virtual announcements was something actually Amy and Stacia last year, they were here for our time with you, had gotten state recognition for our character council. And when we went to that award ceremony, a different school district was doing virtual announcements. And we both walked away being like, that's really interesting, both in the engagement factor, but also the ability to give teachers flexibility. So they could play announcements right at 8:45 or 8:50 when I usually did them, or they could do it, at 9:45 after they have team time in the morning if they have it right away. They had some flexibility with that. And so that's been a really helpful thing when I review school rules or go through character traits. We have graphics on the screen. Every Friday, character council members help me. Principal for half-hour kiddos would help on the announcements. And so it's just been a neat way to try to engage kids and helped us exemplify some of these previous big rocks that we mentioned, specifically the behavior and the character. The other thing that we have really worked hard on this year is increased parent interaction, trying to both do things to educate parents, but also just to increase the back and forth that I had with them. And so with kindergarten boosts that we do right before school starts in August, I presented at that. Orientation day in fall, I presented at that, and then took videos and shared those out with families, and had over 70 hits, which was I thought pretty good. I had Camerath Corner at both conferences and did a trivia question, which was always fun. These are some of our winners from our most recent trivia question, but also just gave me a chance to have 30 seconds with families of how are things going, what can we do for you, what's going well, what's not going well, and that was really helpful. In general, very, very good feedback, but it's just nice to give people that 30 seconds to have a chance to say something to me if they're not someone who would call or email. And then the other piece in the bottom there is just trying to, when we have parents, to try to do some professional development with them. And so at our Math and Muffins and our Breakfast with Books, just having a little bit of PD mixed into that from our math coach or literacy coach has been really good with parents. And then also Jeannie, I think, is going to come back later at some point and talk about a grant that she received and that our district, that Westside and our 4K in the district have participated in, a family involvement grant. And just I hope you bring pictures, because some really cool things that committee, which I sit on too, but Jeannie has really helped lead, have done. So really proud of that work. So that is Westside. I hope I did not go over my time, or our time. Any questions for us?
Just a sort of a comment. Thanks, Chris, and Chris and Jeannie, really appreciate you being here. We expect the administrators to be here. They love to come and visit with school board, but we understand when other staff come that it's above and beyond. So thank you for being here. This is really informative. I think that picking up on your last saying about parent involvement, I think the research is pretty clear that parent engagement is key to student success. So continuing to involve them, and parents like to be involved, I think, and updated. And then the other part, I think, and often as a board, we always raise the issue that, and being conscious of those students who don't have the level of parent support at home that others do, and making sure that we try and compensate for that. Because I think involving parents when parents are there and eager to do that, but also trying to be aware of the students who don't have that at home, and how do we help them. So thanks. I really appreciate you all being here.
That was part of our DPI grant, was that linking that family engagement to learning, and then extending it, not just the families that come to school, but how do we bring that learning and extend that to happen at home? Yeah. So thanks.
So do we get another update about that some other time? Okay, all right.
I'll bring
'Cause
cute kid pictures in June. Yeah.
Well, we are always interested in the strategies that we use to make sure that we're reaching all families, not just some of them or the ones who are there to sign up first. So, anything else?
I want to know what you've learned about yourself from having students who you've been their only principal imitate you for a half hour.
There was a mustache contest.
Yeah. I tell you that, I mean, there's many things about my job that I really enjoy, but that is at the very top of the list, getting to spend a half hour. And it's fun because the kids are excited for it, and just what they write is so amazing. I mean, I had some this year, a fifth grade one that we talked about, that just truly moved me. It was really cool how kids, the self-reflection in it. Every year we do a slightly different question. This year was about what character trait have you worked the hardest on, and how has that helped Westside? And it just, I really enjoy it. And just the time with the kids is fun, because you never know what they want to do. Mm-hmm. Some want to go see previous teachers. Some want to go see their siblings. Some want to be on announcements. Some are petrified of that. Would help me design the announcements, pick the fact of the day, and pick the international days of the year and stuff, but they don't want to be in it. So it's just fun to really get to know. I was asked what they want to do when they grow up, and it's just neat to learn about kids that I maybe don't know as well.
Well, we'll see if a few years from now they end up being school administrators.
It's interesting, the most common when I ask kids what they want to do when they grow up, I get so many want to be the art teacher. So Selena has a lot of competition on being the next art teacher.
Well, that speaks well of her. Thank you very much. All right, we are going to move on to some reports, and the first one we have is our student representative. So, Sierra?
So with school coming to an end, for most students, the future feels a little scary. We have so many choices, and most of us don't know where to start. At the Run, we had the opportunity to go to a tour at the University of River Falls. I found it helpful in our next steps in life. We got to talk to a panel of students, which gave us a small insight into the college life. We also had CVTC visit. They talked about the trades like welding and plumbing. It made me feel like any career is possible if I put the work in. Throughout Women's History Month, students from Kenya's Gender Studies will be teaching us about a woman in history. At River Falls High Schools, I know the students are feeling the pressure too. They have representatives from different colleges and the Army that visit during lunch. I noticed at the high school that they don't do a lot for mental well-being. I'm very fortunate to have a school that's so committed to helping students in any way possible for our mental health. When I talked with the high school representative, she talked about how she hoped they could do more than a wellness week, because life is hard and we need to have help from time to time. I know as a school, it would be hard to satisfy every student's needs, but we need to start making efforts for a better school. One way I thought we could do this is by having multiple rooms where students can go when they need a break. Being allowed to take a break and take a step back is an important part in everybody's life. As a school, we should support people who are in need. We should do wellness groups where students can talk about how they feel and how we can have different coping mechanisms for our lives. When we help those mentally, they tend to do better in everyday activities. As a student who went from straight A's to failing, I wish I had a school that was willing to support me through my mental crisis and not turn me away. There's many things we can do to support our students, but we have to take the effort to do it. And I would like any feedback from anybody if they have anything.
So if I followed you, I think you were drawing a distinction between the mental health supports that you feel that work for you at the Renaissance Academy. So could you tell us more about those things that are effective?
So we have these group sessions with Kelvin, who was a volunteer winner or recipient or something. I forgot. Yeah. But he hosts these groups where it's like an hour long, and we usually talk about like something to work on to better our lives. Like 1 week was how to cope with like things that are happening at home and at school, and how we can gauge it so we can focus on our schoolwork and get that stuff done, but then also being able to take care of ourselves. It just gives us a time to talk to each other and to talk about our feelings and how are we feeling and what we can do to make ourselves better. Having those things are beneficial to all students, I think. And I think the high school should do some things to help and improve the mental wellness of all students.
I'm going to guess that that's one of those things that we can never do enough of. But I'm awfully glad to hear your stories of things going well in that regard, and an adult that you can really connect with at the Renaissance. I'm also really intrigued by the visits that you've had at UWRF, those opportunities, and CVTC. I imagine that students saw a distinction between a technical school and a four-year college.
Yeah, they all really enjoyed it. Like when we went to the University of River Falls, we got to see like how lunch would work and how all of like the stuff would work, and it was really nice to see that anyone could do it if you just put in work.
Yeah, I appreciate the courage you have to speak and advocate for additional mental health supports for all of our kids, all of our students. Certainly, it's a issue that we recognize if we were to identify what our district sees as our top 3 or 4 challenges, mental health is on the list. And so, as the board president said, certainly we take that responsibility very seriously, and we're working on things at all of our schools, including the high school, but certainly know that there's room for us to get better at all of that. That's work that will never, unfortunately, see an end. And so, some of the things that maybe are less visible to you in your setting at the Wren, and there may be some things going on at the high school to provide some of that support with a social worker and school psych and counselors and so on that aren't as visible, as well as working with administration and even finding some external, we've benefited from Todd's help and the Lions Club providing mental health support through formal therapists for some of our students. Mr. Inoue gave a report on that very recently. We know it's an issue that continues to be a growing problem, and we certainly take that very seriously, and I appreciate you bringing that to the forefront again here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the superintendent has a report too.
Yeah, I'll be brief. Just wanted to mention to the board that as a part of our ongoing process to look at our facility needs moving forward, the board several months ago went through a selection process and selected LHB, an architectural firm, and Krause Anderson to help us do an assessment of all of our facilities. And part of that process just last week over spring break, after first interviewing many staff members in previous weeks, last week, they wanted to tour the building when the buildings were empty, basically, to kind of take a look at the inner workings of our buildings, HVAC systems and so on. And so that walkthrough was completed last week, I believe, Joe, at all of our buildings. Would that be a fair statement on my part?
All student occupied buildings.
Yeah. And so just briefly wanted to mention that. The board recently received our update on the enrollment, the demographer study, and helped us to kind of look into the future of what our facility needs might be, as well as the implications that enrollment would have on our financial picture as a district. We continue to look at pulling all of this information together and headed towards the path of identifying where are we at financially and what do all of those implications have on the district in the near term and long term. And so we've talked often about the possibility of a February 24 referendum. We continue to gather this information to take us down that path. We'll see where we're at after we pull together all of that information. Possible option, if we think we need to buy ourselves more time, we could always wait and hold that referendum in April as opposed to February. But it certainly looks like that we are headed in that direction. Again, the majority of our conversation has been around a February date. We'll keep looking at that, and in the interim, obviously, we're trying to do our very best to give a slow rollout to the community and help them know that we're studying all of these issues, and when we get all of the data pulled together, we'll bring all of that forward to our community. We'll engage the community in transparent conversation, as we did previously in developing our strategic plan, holding listening sessions and surveying community members and so on. And so that's a process that all lies ahead of us here in the coming months. But the latest update is that assessment that was done this last week. Also, lastly, I'll just mention community members can be looking forward to here in the next couple of weeks. You'll receive a newsletter. It's packed with lots of good stuff about our school district, lots of good news stories. We produce that newsletter once every year. This time, usually it's late March when we crank out that hard copy newsletter that goes to all district residents by way of good old-fashioned mail. And so you can look forward to seeing that nice newsletter coming your way here in the next couple of weeks. That's it.
Good, thank you. All right, we're going to move on to administrative reports, and we have updates regarding our strategic plan progress. And so today we're looking at Goal 2.2, develop school-wide behavior expectations that align to district core values. And we are going to start with our high school students. So first up will be River Falls High School and Renaissance Charter Academy.
Good evening. Good to see you all. Kit Lidke again, building principal. A lot of what we have up there is still more of the same. If we could just scroll down a bit, I want to talk about Smart Pass, which is going to start at the start of term 4. Smart Pass, if you've been to maybe a couple graduation speeches, you hear me talk about the both blessing and curses of these things with adolescents. The day and age of me passing a note to Nicole Langlois to skip from class or hang out in the hallway isn't there anymore, but I can text, right? And those things. We are trying, Smart Pass implementation really is during our instructional time when kids ask to go to a bathroom, a locker, things of that nature. And it's an AI system that students will have an account. They'll use their Chromebook, their district-issued Chromebook, or their phone, and say, I'm running to the restroom or other things. It can set some quotas for us because we don't know. We got 1,200 kids in our building. So it can set it, I can set it where I can say I only want to see 50 kids in the hallway at any time during instructional time. Or if Cindy and I are troublemakers together all the time, AI technology will tell us that Cindy and I skipped class or left class at the same time during second block 6 times last week. And it's going to tell us that we shouldn't be out at the same time anymore. And so we're using technology to really honestly combat technology that's causing us to kind of have our heads spinning at times with kids leaving class and different things. And again, we use pass systems right now and other things. This will help us, I think, get a little bit more of a grasp on what's going on. There was a debate, again, you've heard a lot of districts talk through everything from vape sensors and things in bathrooms. We felt like this was a far more proactive measure in working with all students and ensuring a level of accountability than other things. So we're excited to do that. I know our kids are really excited about it too. They're not. The last one that we're talking through is our cell phone policy. I still have the philosophy that at the high school level, we have to find ways to show or teach levels of responsible use. However, it is becoming more and more of an addiction or a distraction for kids. So our building leadership team is going to craft and kind of start talking through different things. I'd look forward to having those conversations with you as a board and what the community is looking for. I have not found a school of 1,200 students that's flat out just banning cell phones. I see smaller districts and smaller schools doing parts of that. Again, I fall in between, but I will tell you still our teachers are competing against something in their pocket that can, entertain them for weeks and months and years on end. And we're seeing it far more in the addictive behavior side of it. So I think we want to have some more conversations with you as a board, with our BLT moving forward, so that we can have a different level of implementation coming into fall of 2023. That's updates for high school. I'll turn it over to Chris.
Kit, if I could just one comment about that.
Yeah.
I think, again, I made a comment earlier about parent engagement.
Yes.
I think there's a level of responsibility that parents need to have here. Parents
Very much so.
Parents like to be involved. They like to know what's going on with their kid, and they need to know what's going on with their kids. So if this is a problem, I hope we're involving parents in the corrective strategy on what to do with this. So
they just want me to take them all away and solve that problem for them, Alan. I'm not going to lie to you.
Darn cell phones have been a problem since, 2007? So I'll tell you a little bit about our philosophy at the Renaissance and how it relates to our behavioral expectations. So we have slowly becoming what I call a school of hope. We've actually used a model called School of Hope. What we're trying to foster in our building is a sense of safety for students and a sense of hope, because we know that with some hope, a lot of the behavioral things kind of go by the wayside. So kind of dealing with, on the front end, with students to make sure that they have a sense of goals for the future, agency, a way to reach those goals, thus the trips to the university and so forth. And then ultimately they feel like safe in our building, like people care about them. So it's less about transactions in our building. You know, you do this for the gold star, you do this and you get punished. It's more about building relationships with our students. And we find that overall, that's been kind of a key to our success, is knowing each student, what their strengths are, their challenges, and how we can support them is really our focus. So we had a book read this summer. We're kind of following through on that in how we structure things at the Wren. And you know, creating, like I said, agency and pathways for students for success is our goal. And a lot of the behavioral stuff goes by the wayside when you do that. So I just, you know, that's about all I'm going to add to ours on 2.2. All right.
So it sounds to me like, Chris, what you're talking about is when you are talking about, what did you say, School of Hope? Or-
School of Hope is our
Hope, yeah.
our model, and it's developing
The
goals for
relationships.
students, relationships, a sense of there is a future for me.
And so that those things, those relationships become preventative strategies so that you're not dealing with as many behavior infractions. Is
Definitely
that
preventative strategies,
hopeful?
but also when we're dealing with kids who score high on ACEs,
Mm-hmm.
it tends to diminish the impact of ACEs and replaces that with a sense of agency and that we can do something different maybe from where we're coming from in terms of tough situations. And, you know, so far we've seen some evidence of success with that. How we're going to measure that is not all that incredible. We'll be looking at things like, you know, incidents, discipline incidents, attendance, grades, all of that stuff. But we feel overall, from what we've seen so far, is there's some evidence to support that that's a direction we should go. And if we want kids to, you know, again, be successful beyond the Renaissance.
Good, thank you. Thanks to both of you.
Chris,
Todd?
I can't tell this on the. Speaking of Hope, I saw on my way over here because I drive right by
Yeah.
it, but the structure actually exists. There's
It's tall now.
they took.
I
they
drive
took
by
the- they
it
put the
every
steel
day,
on.
even if I don't have to go that way. I just, you know,
Yep. So
so it's good. But we're having a lot of fun at the police station. You know. Yeah, I think so. I don't know. Yeah.
Maybe the kids are going to have to take a field trip over to see the new building at
Oh,
some
we will.
point.
Yeah.
Okay,
We've been
good.
talking about it. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Can we quote you on that statement that you're having a lot of fun at the police station, Chris?
I would put that in quotes for sure. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you to both of you for your work. All right, next up will be the middle school. Mark?
All right, not a ton to report. The first one, it's on all of our spreadsheets, and that's taking a look at the Chapel Hill Code of Conduct. I think it's a larger discussion with our admin team, whether we spend some time this summer going through it, because it is a very hefty document. So we have not really made a lot of progress on that. The monthly character kickoffs, I still do those monthly with our students. I had a chance to do that last Friday before spring break. And if you're curious, these are the types of things that I share with the students. So if you've heard of Sean Aker, okay, The Happiness Advantage, it's probably one of the most watched TED Talks, over 13 million views. So I talked about with our students the importance of having a positive brain and how that's linked to performance. And through his research, what Sean Aker found, he's a professor at Harvard, people are 3 times more creative, 31% more productive, 40% more likely to receive a promotion, 23% fewer fatigue symptoms, up to 10 times more engaged, and 39% more likely to live to age 94. So how do you do that? So then I shared with the students some small things that you can do to help develop a positive mindset. Writing 3 gratitudes, writing things you're grateful for. It's impossible to be in your negative mindset when you're writing down something you're grateful for. The second one is journaling. Third one is exercise. Fourth one's meditation, and then practicing random acts of kindness. So just giving some kids some concrete things to help develop a positive mindset. Weekly student support team. We still do that every week with our counseling department, school resource officer, social worker, and then I skipped one. Mr. Buck has his 3rd quarterly expectations. We do that every quarter with our students. That'll be coming up in 2 weeks. So that's the update from middle school.
Thank you. All right, elementary.
I was just told there was a Nate that was supposed to do this tonight. There it is. Okay, so the challenge in front of us is that we've got 4 elementary schools talking about one thing that's super complex. And so my approach to the update tonight is to try to be as focused as possible. In order to do that, I went Beautiful Mind on it. and made drawings of trees and all sorts of things. And here's what I came up with, is that at all 4 elementary schools, when it comes to creating behavior expectations, all 4 things that showed up when I went through all of our spreadsheets were that they're character-based. So that's one thing that you're sure that to get out of it. All 4 elementaries have items up there that are reflective or restorative. So when we're looking at how to deal with students, whether it's through our fix-it plans or behavior plans or our roadmaps or whatever we call them, it's a restorative process. And also looking at the different pieces in each of our buildings, clarity came out. So there's different action steps that focus on bringing clarity for students, parents, and staff in terms of what those expectations are. And so for tonight, I thought I'd focus on the clarity pieces that come through to me in our updates. And so over the last 90 days, Rocky Branch, in order to help bring clarity for students and staff, they've been doing things like staff trainings on zones of regulation, which is what we use with our students. The counselors typically teach it, but it's good for the teachers to have those things. And things like TSIT, which I think we've talked about before, which is done, Andrea Gansky's the trainer. She works, she's a school psych out of Greenwood, and she'll go around and do trainings for teachers who need that. In addition to that, at Rocky Branch, the restorative piece and the clarity piece is getting on the same page with staff members about how to have conversations with students who have behaviors that need to be addressed. And so it sounds like they've developed a process for that so that it's more restorative based. They're talking about things like the behavior, and like you heard Dr. Camrath talk about, just a process to talk through like what's at the root of those things. Anything to add? Ashley, you can say no.
No.
Okay, great. Seriously, if you want to add something, you can. Okay. Greenwood, for that clarity piece, what came out to me were the things that, they at the beginning of the school year, over the summer, they identified some patterns in their behavior data through Infinite Campus. Nate talked about that last time. Dr. Sherman talked about that last time in terms of how a majority of the behaviors fall solely with a small number of students. So in bringing clarity to his staff in terms of what is our philosophy, how do we deal with those students. Mainly we try to be restorative and reflective, but sometimes as much as we don't want to have external rewards, sometimes that does work for those few kiddos that do need it. Thank you. In Westside, for their clarity piece, a few things that I pulled out, and you heard a lot from Dr. Camrath about things that he's doing already, so I won't belabor it. The things that I pulled out were things like identifying major and minor behaviors, so bringing clarity to students and staff about what those behaviors are and what to do with them. In both Greenwood, Westside, and the Montessori have been doing similar trainings as I mentioned with Rocky Branch, which is important because we have staff turnover and time passes and we forget what things are. So all those things are to help build a clarity. The Montessori has been doing a lot of the same things, and understand too the complexity of these things. Like the things that I'm talking about, I drew a tree because the roots are character-based, reflection, restorative, those sorts of things. The trunk of the tree is really that idea of continuous improvement. So each year we're looking at data, we're analyzing it, try to figure out what to shoot out the branches and leaves and flowers, if you're a visual person. So a lot of the things that we're talking about, I'm talking about that each building is doing, we all are doing them or have done them in some capacity in the last handful of years. Clarity at the Montessori has been more focused on identifying the student behaviors and then trying to drill down to what the root cause is at, and then what control we have over in affecting those behaviors. And so a lot of individual conversations about not just that this behavior is acceptable or unacceptable, but where's the behavior coming from, what's the function, and then how can we address that piece specifically.
You know, one of the things that I noticed in all of the presentations is we aren't simply expecting children to be compliant to our rules. We are trying to help them to learn and to grow and to understand, you know, what happens when a relationship is broken? What do we need to do to repair it? How can I prevent some of these things? How can I grow? And I appreciate that. I think it respects childhood and adolescence and the fact that we're all about teaching. So anything else from anybody? Thank you for your good work. All right, we're going to move on to action items. And before the board this evening, we have the meeting minutes from the regular Board of Education meeting that was held on February 20th. We have bills that have been submitted for payment. We also have recommendations regarding employment. So that at this point, do we have a motion to approve minutes, bills, and employment as presented in the board book? Thanks, Todd. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Cindy. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion is carried. All right, I would like to give you an update about what the discussion was at the Personnel Committee. We met on February 27th, and on that day, we had a fairly long conversation about the calendar issue that's going to come before you. I'm going to highlight a few things. We discussed the important dates for the 2023-24 school year. I think it's important to make sure that everybody realizes we are not making a change to that calendar that has already been approved, but we did add the important dates, like when parent-teacher conferences are going to be and when the open house dates will be. So that's included in the recommendation for tonight. The committee also discussed an administrative recommendation to add 5 minutes to the school day, and I want to make sure that the community understands why we're doing this. The proposal really addresses two important issues. The first one is to add some instructional minutes so that we can have some more flexibility to meet the state mandated requirements for instructional time. If we have another winter and spring like we've had this year, we'll be very happy to have a bit more leeway, a bit more flexibility. By adding the 5 minutes, we are going to have 3 more days of instruction for Meyer Middle School, the high school, and the Renaissance Academy. And we'll have 5 days at our elementary schools and at the 4K program, which is really nice because that means that we are going to have that much more flexibility to be able to protect especially our youngest students from either makeup days far into June or virtual learning days, which none of us particularly likes, but we also know that in a year like this, we've needed to use that as one strategy to deal with all of our snow days. But by adding the 5 minutes, it hopefully gets us away from needing to do that quite so much. Yep.
Can I say
Sure.
one thing about the 5 minutes? So this would be, I think, the 4th school year that I've been involved with the board, and I believe that this has happened now, not related to snow days, but I think we've had to make adjustments to at least 2 of the 4, maybe 3 of the 4 years. So I think this has happened kind of, midstream a bunch of years. So another key, it's not like, in my mind, it's not a complete change from where we're at because we've gotten to this point most of those years that I've been involved anyway. And so now it's just being done proactively instead of a little bit more reactive.
Exactly. I wanted to make the same point, that this is really going to, we think that families are going to like this because we won't have to make those mid-year adjustments. I think that's what you're talking about, Todd. Another really important change to this is that it will allow us to have common collaborative planning time at the high school, which has been a need for a long time. We've talked about it, but now it's going to be able to come to fruition. So the 5 minutes will be added to the beginning of the day, which is not optimal, at the end of the day, which is the way we can do it without disrupting the afternoon bus schedule. So we had that set of issues that we looked at. The committee also heard a brief update about the work of the Insurance Study Committee, which was essentially to say, we're getting started on that. More to come, exactly. Then, what else do we have? Oh, the committee looked at and reviewed a few smallish revisions to the Academic Services Secretary job description. And we also discussed recommending to the board that we send a letter to begin contract negotiations with our two union groups. So we'll be sending something to the teachers and to the bus drivers if the board approves that. Am I forgetting anything? Okay. All right. So at this point then, we have two motions in front of the board related to those issues. We'll take them individually. The first one is to approve the Academic Services Secretary job description. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Thanks, Bob. Is there a second? Thanks, Lindsay. Any discussion, questions, or comments? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion is carried. And the next recommendation is that we approve the commencement of contract negotiations. That will be with our two unions, the teachers and the bus drivers. Is there a motion, please? Thanks, Bob. A second? Second. I thank you, Lindsay. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you, everyone. And I'll turn to Alan for an update about educational program, and then you will have one motion tonight as well.
Right. So first off, so the Education Program Committee, there'll be one. Well, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But the Education Program Committee is me, Lindsay, and Cindy. Okay. We met on January 9th. March 6th.
Probably been on January.
The date says January 9th up here. Okay.
It does?
I'm reading off this, so it's the wrong date on here. Anyway, so
Fix that.
yeah, we'll be able to fix it as a minute. We had a number of things, and as usual, we had a very good and robust conversation at that meeting. First, David Crail gave us a very good update. We had a good discussion about high school sports. What's currently going on, we talked about the girls hockey co-op, which there's some changes to that, so we won't be acting on that one tonight, and Jamie will have some comments about that in just a little bit. But we also talked about the other teams. We talked a little bit about the WIAC approving lacrosse, but that whether or not we as a district will eventually go with lacrosse is out there. But we had a good conversation about it. Really appreciated Dave bringing that stuff to us. So do you want to come back to the girls hockey co-op, or do you want to say something now about it?
I'll just mention now that so when our activities director, Mr. Crail, brought this to the Ed Program Committee, it was ahead of a meeting that was held with the conference activities director, and procedurally, the that was being discussed had to do with adding another school district, Prescott, to the current existing girls hockey co-op comprised of River Falls, Baldwin, and St. Croix Central. And the process in adding any new school district to any co-op, girls hockey or otherwise, is that first it gets approval. Any additional district that's going to join an existing co-op goes first through the process of being approved by the activity directors throughout the entire conference. And Mr. Crail made mention of this at the Ed Program Committee, that we were a little ahead of that step, but brought that forward maybe out of convenience. It's how we typically try to do business, is we put as many issues in an appropriate committee of the board as possible. Sometimes we put agenda items just on a full board meeting, but at any rate, we got a little ahead of ourselves on having that presented to the Ed Program Committee for approval, because the 7 athletic directors of the conference said, hang on, we don't really want to add another team to our hockey co-op. We already have 33 kids in our program, and we're not looking to expand and add an additional school district to our co-op at this time. Moving forward, the issue is that, in part at least, co-ops are established if a community school district has a few players interested in a sport, but not enough to actually field a team, they then consider a co-op. Knock on the door of your neighbors and see if they want to join a co-op. And so the evolution of our current Fusion girls hockey team evolved through that kind of a beginning. And now with 33 athletes in that program, we have more than enough athletes to sustain that program, and we don't want to open the door that it would be this year it's Prescott, next year it'll be another team, and so on, I think is the perception of this existing co-op. And so therefore, that AD group in our conference will be establishing some clear kind of criteria to help outline that and make that more clear moving forward. But at this time, we're just going to table that decision at the board level and not ask you to vote on it this evening.
Okay, good.
With that, we've had teams come and go from that co-op since it started. Spring Valley was in it for a while, Glenwood City's been in it, Ellsworth's been in it. Why would they draw the line now with Prescott with one player?
I feel bad for that one student. I just,
That doesn't make sense to me. And you can tell how many kids are coming up within the next 2 years because you know how many kids are in the youth program. It's not like Prescott's gonna all of a sudden bring 13 girls to the high school program because you can count how many kids they got playing in the youth. And also there's other co-ops in the state that have many. I mean like 5 or 10 schools in the co-op. So. Bill, what do you think?
Would you like me to address some of those questions?
I took a stab at it. But.
So, to address your question specifically, yes, we've had a number of different schools that have been a part of that co-op throughout the years. As I'm learning by talking to the other athletic directors in the conference, this is part of a larger conversation. So we're not the only school that has received a request to add a school to the co-op. There is another co-op currently, specifically it's the Chippewa Falls Menominee Co-op, who's also received requests from other schools to join their co-op. We've had some conversations over the course of just the last 2 years alone in regards to swim and dive, in regards to gymnastics. These schools from surrounding areas, and by surrounding areas I mean surrounding of our conference, you know, close to Eau Claire, close to Menominee, that don't have swim and dive, that don't have gymnastics, and have asked to be a part of our various programs. We've received that request for swim and dive and gymnastics, and we've said no. We're not looking to add a team or to co-op at this point in time. Some of the conversation pertaining to this specifically with the addition of Prescott or potentially the addition of another school to the Chippewa Falls Menominee is, you know, if we open the door to them coming in when we are sustainable, then what is our response to teams that come to us and say, we want to join your gymnastics team, we want to join your swim and dive team, when those programs are also already sustainable? What would be our rationale for saying no? And as activities directors, we had a really long conversation, and I thought that it was a conversation that was all based on the right reasons, right? When we come together and have those meetings, our conversations aren't to look at what will benefit each individual school. Our conversations are, what do we want to do as a conference to protect the conference as a whole, and to make sure that we are consistent in our decision-making as a conference for the sake of the conference. And what we decided, and quite honestly, I came to you presenting that information and asked for you to approve it because I thought that it was the right move. But at the same time, I respect my colleagues and the decisions and the way that they're looking at it. And so we decided that we needed to have some conversation on what does it look like when a team requests to come in. What are the steps that we're going to take as a conference to say, yes, this makes sense, no, this doesn't make sense. And quite honestly, those conversations haven't occurred before, and we need to do a better job of having that clear procedure in place, so that when these things happen, and they're going to, again, we can have some definitive answers into why we're giving the response that we're giving.
That's really thorough. And as with so many things in public education in Wisconsin, what appears to be a really simple issue has a lot more to it that we've got to work through.
Yeah.
Appreciate you staying on top of that. So what you're saying is that even if we're willing to do it, we can't do it without a conference, with the conference being engaged in us and approving it.
That's correct.
So the larger conversation, until the conference, our athletic conference, comes to grips with this and comes back to us, we should table this and not move ahead with it.
Yes.
Even
And,
though.
and we as activities directors have all stated that we're going to put the work in to make sure that we have that process aligned. And both our co-op as well as the Chippewa Falls Menominee Co-op comes up for renewal again next year. So should these requests come to us at that point in time, we'll have a clear criterion established to be able to say, yes, no, here's why we made the decisions.
But in the meantime, those students still have one option. It may not be the desirable option, but they can always open enroll to the district that's got the team that they want.
That would be the only current option available.
Yeah, okay. All right. Thank you, David.
Yes.
That was helpful. We know a lot more about co-ops based on that committee meeting than today, but how we do it, and, okay. We also had a really good update and another conversation about 4K programming. Becky McClavely and Nate Wells came back to us and talked again about how we're handling transportation issues, that we need an additional site at Rocky Branch. We talked about the fee structures and how those work, and the fact that parents do not pay for the school district's 4K program. But childcare is not simple in this world today, as every parent knows. And so parents who are having extended care on that same site end up paying for that. And we had some conversations so that we do understand that the part that they're doing with the district is at no cost, but if they're keeping their students there longer, there is a cost involved with that. Parents do get to choose the site. That was part of the way we went about, part of the reason we went about with individual ones in our district when we rolled this out, rather than to just take it and make it all 4K programming through the district. Parents do get quite a bit of choice in this, the way we have it currently. Just makes it a little more confusing, and they've got to figure this out. And we've got the people there to answer their questions. We also had a conversation about our update on our CISA 11 shared services agreement. Us as a district can't necessarily provide all of the detailed services. We can't hire individual staff. This is one reason for the CISAs out there. They allow us to share services and to contract with that regional association to help us with several of our specialty areas. And we talked about that and some of the minor changes, just some tweaks, but we have this come before us every year and talk about it. We did have a brief discussion about what's going on with the curriculum review cycle, and Mary Beth Elliott talked to us about the fact that they're working on this. We thought we might get a little bit of an update, but we're really going to wait till the May 1 meeting to talk about this a little bit more in detail. This is not new. We've always had curriculum review, but it's not been on a regular schedule. And what Mary Beth and Amy are working on this year is a more consistent, regular calendar schedule on when our various curricula come up for review, how we handle input, how we get public input, we get teacher input, we get parent input, we move forward on those as approval. So we'll have some more detail on that in May, and I think that will be a good conversation. They're really putting some good work into it this year, and I'm very pleased with that. So next meeting will be on May 1.
Mm-hmm.
No April meeting.
So do you want to make the motion about the CISA contract?
I'm sorry. Yes, I'll move that we approve the CISA contract for 23-24.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Any discussion, questions, or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion is carried. All right, we are now going to take action about the calendar changes that I referred to during the personnel update. And so at this point, I move that we approve the 2023-24 school calendar and important dates document, as well as approve the 2023-24 daily schedule. Is there a second? Thank you, Lindsay. Questions or comments? You've done a lot of work on this, Dave, so thank you.
Really appreciate it, yeah.
We included a link to the presentation that we shared at the last meeting, so that
state start schedule looks like and identifying those 27 days. So that's the other link, is just where they fall. We strategically picked Wednesdays because there's more late night events on Tuesdays, so that will allow kids either to be able to sleep in and get a ride in, or come into school and have a little bit slower start to their day. I think the big impact here for this is that we're not really changing the transportation schedule. So families, if they have a regular way that they get their child to school, they can still have that regular way. There'll be support services for those kids to be there, supervision, those types of things at the high school. And it's not it's not until lunchtime that they're going to be unsupervised. It's a small period of time, but it's a consistent piece that allows that PLC work. And then one thing that Lisa included in there is just kind of the goals and a sample agenda of what teachers use that time for, so they understand that it's really valuable time. And then another piece that maybe you didn't highlight that we wanted to highlight is we're adding planned virtual learning days on the 9th of October and the 19th of February. And the reason that we're adding those days is it allows even more instructional minutes to take place at the high school, and to give us even more buffer time. But it has a dual purpose that if we ever get to the point where we have to do some virtual at the high school, that kinks have been worked out because we've planned ahead and we've had some planned virtual opportunities that are in kind of a low stress point. It's not an immediate, like, hey, we got to turn around and flip and do a virtual day. We know the 9th, we know the 19th. There's going to be some planning ahead. And so that does give us that buffer. At the middle and high school, I'm saying it's 3+ days because you have to remember that, it's complex because sometimes we have to start late and sometimes we have to go out early. And at the state level, all they really care about is your total number of hours. So we're at over 3 days. And so depending on how our inclement weather shows up next year, it gives us that buffer at the middle and high school of 3+ days. Then at the elementary, 5+ days. So there's a little bit of a gap there then. So what happens on days where maybe we need to make up time at the high school and middle school, but we don't have to make up time at the elementary, all employees, all teachers, I'll start with teachers, all teachers who would be expected to work that day, 6-12 teachers would be providing virtual learning, and then K-5 teachers would be doing virtual in-service. So their expectations for what they would have to do, they would have to be working, but how they would be doing that would be a little bit different. So that gives us that ability to get to, basically we would get 5+ days before we would have to make a decision that we were going to do an on-plan virtual learning or to take away an in-service. And to Todd's point, this is my 6th year here. Take out 2 years because of COVID craziness. The other years we've had to make some decision, whether it's adding minutes or taking an in-service day away, which is really frustrating for lots of different people because you plan for those in-service days and when you lose them, it's a real lost opportunity. It's also very frustrating for families who plan when they look at a schedule and they say, oh, it's a vacation day. I'm not quite sure what they're doing. Maybe it's in-service, maybe it's vacation, but this is the day that we plan to do something and then we come and grab it back. That's also really frustrating. So we want to avoid that for everybody and just have a nice clean schedule. We'll see if it works. We'll probably have 8 next year. But
Well, we'll still be, it could be worse than that.
You'll have none, yeah, you'll have none.
I told you, it's like
Yeah, and that question may come up. That
That-
question has come up. Kids might bring that up. Well, what happens if we exceed the hours? We get the last day off. No,
You're going to be
no.
that much smarter. That's right, be that much smarter. Thank you, those are really important points to add, yeah. Anything else? Thank you, Lisa, for your work adding to the links and the schedule. It's important for us. All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion is carried. All right, now we are in a position that the administration has come to the board with a recommendation that we suspend the K-8 virtual e-school program indefinitely. I have 3 things to say about that. First of all, why? Well, we have low enrollment. We simply don't have very many students. We had a lot of students at one point, and now, as we're doing in-person learning, our enrollment is really low, which leads to the second point, that because of that low enrollment, we simply can't allocate those dollars effectively to that program any longer. I think it's really important to make sure that families, that people recognize that we will still have the virtual opportunities at the high school. So this is K-8. So I draw your attention to the word suspend because that is an important component in terms of compliance with the law. So at this point, do we have a motion, please?
I'll move to, do we say approve or?
Approve the yeah.
Approve the recommendation.
To suspend that, yeah. All right. Thank you, Todd. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Bob seconded. This is a conversation that we've been having over several months. This is not new. The board's been talking about it over time. But is there anything else before we make a decision?
Stacy, I would just say one thing.
Sure.
Just to be really clear to anybody who's tuned into this is because of budget. This is because of budget, and it's the first of probably many conversations we may be having over the next couple of years, especially if the legislature does not fix the budget issue that's currently exists in the state. Every school district in the state is concerned right now about whether or not we're going to even begin to get the floor ceiling that we need going forward. We as a district have really gotten used to, and I think the community has gotten used to the fact that we haven't had to have budget cuts like most districts in the state. We've been doing okay. It's now caught up to the better districts like ours to where there's certain things we just can't afford anymore. We got to set priorities, and we're suspending this because of budget.
And there will be more. This is not going to solve the problem by any stretch of the imagination. It's one component in a larger plan. Anything else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried. We should also remember that all of the families have been made aware of this, so they will not be surprised. All right, Lynette, I'm going to turn to you to talk about the roof and skylights and wall replacements and a penthouse and all of these projects.
Oh, I missed the penthouse on
Well,
there.
that's what we've been calling these wall panels,
Oh,
but
very good. Okay,
these
I missed
people know
that.
it as the penthouse.
And Joe is here as well. The Finance and Facilities Committee decided to not have a separate meeting to discuss just this item. So we're here tonight for the first time, first time seeing the bids and asking for approval tonight. Joe did a great job kind of packaging up all of these bids into one RFP. Kind of helps to encourage more bidders, more companies to bid on it, and also sometimes we get a better pricing with more projects put in there. So Joe did a great job. These are the recommended bids that we received and are asking for approval for the wall panels for $600,964, which would be paid for out of Fund 46. That's an item that the board had previously discussed and knew was coming.
Which we call the sinking fund sometimes, everybody.
Do you want to, we've had lots of conversations about it, but do you maybe just want to mention, given that we just said for budgetary reasons, we've made a decision to suspend the virtual elementary or K through 8 program. Yeah, the Fund 46 is money that's been put away over years and now is available to us because it's been sitting there for at least a 5-year period from our first contribution. So it's not taking the place of funds that were in this year's budget, basically.
We
Yeah,
can
so
only use it for this.
Yes.
For-
So the district did a great job when Fund 46 was made available, started putting some funds aside for projects like this. Districts will do that, especially if they have some extra cash flow and want to put it in there, have a 10-year plan. It's a struggle for districts that don't have the additional funds, and as Alan alluded to, that's kind of where we're at now. But we have the funds in Fund 46. We have a plan for that, and they cannot be moved out for any other reason other than to be spent on what was planned and what they were put in there for. So unfortunately, we couldn't bring them back out and use them for operating expenses. So, yeah. The second item is the approval of the skylights at Meyer Middle School in Rocky Branch. A couple of the skylights, those would be paid for out of general fund. Those were budgeted for replacement. And then the third item is actually the district office. If you remember back in May of 2022, there was a pretty significant hailstorm, and the district office roof did receive damage, did have damage for that. So although the project cost is $59,000, the district would be responsible for the $25,000 insurance deductible, and the rest would be paid for by our insurance company. So those are the 3 bids, and we're looking for approval.
We'll take a motion and a second, and then we'll discuss.
I'll move for approval of the 3 bids.
Thank you, Todd. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Bob. All right.
Yes, I'm
wanna-
here to answer any questions
Okay.
you may have. As Lynette alluded to, we had a really good turnout. We had 4 bidders that responded to this, 7 in total, 3 of them are mechanical, so 4 roofing bidders. And then you all should have a handout, a cool little picture here to kind of give some context to what exactly we're talking about. Penthouse or wall panels, they're the same basic thing. That's item number 1 on the pictures. Those areas are actually a story higher than the roof level. So they're wrapped by these panels that have failed. And then, obviously, the district office is pretty self-explanatory, so we don't have a picture of that. But number 3 are these, they're like a fiberglass, it's called CalWall is the brand name. It's a fiberglass product that allows light to be, it's a translucent panel that allows light through. And the fiberglass has just simply been eaten away. They're all original to the buildings. So 1987 on the middle school and early 90s circa of Rocky Branch, and they are failing. So we're to the point now where replacement is necessary. We've been caulking like crazy, these things. So I'll open up to you guys for questions.
Todd, for clarity, it's not actually a penthouse. It actually houses the utilities up there.
Correct. So as an example, yeah, so line item 1, the farthest right side of the page of Meyer Middle School is the auditorium. So if you're sitting in there, obviously that's an elevated ceiling. So yes, good point.
So
One.
it doesn't have a man cave on it.
It doesn't, no. No.
And it's getting water in it.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes, thank you for that.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything else? Bob?
Who was this successful bidder? Was it the same one for all 3 projects?
No, so I did have a combination bid, and that bid was not financially advantageous for us. So Jackson and Associates was the Meyer Middle School wall panel replacements. McPhillips was the district office asphalt shingle project, and then Jackson and Associates again for Meyer Middle School and Rocky Branch skylight infill. Both of those firms we have a good reputation with. We've done significant millions of dollars over the last 5 years with each firm.
And Joe, this would be done this summer?
Yes, so June, we kind of ramp up, 25 days in June approximately for Meyer Middle School, and then it would be a July project for the skylights, is what we're looking at.
It's always one of our challenges. This is not just getting bids, and it's not just getting the work done, it's getting the work done when the kids.
In that time
In that time period, which I
Correct.
really appreciate your work on trying to get that scheduled, yeah.
It's a team effort, absolutely.
Anything else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you to Lynette and thank you to Joe. All right. If you all look at page 39, because it's going to be much easier to talk about the first reading of this policy if I can show you on these documents. So, before the board today is a revision to our school board policy 453.4 related administering medication to students, and then the accompanying 2 rules. So we have long had a policy because, of course, we do administer medication to students. But what we are adding now, the major addition, is naloxone, which is a medication that can reverse the problems
Yeah,
connected to
overdose
opioids.
with opioids.
Yeah. So we needed to have a policy that supports use of that. That medication will be available in our schools. I'm also pointing out that on the first page, you'll see some tiny changes about documentation provided to the health office, not the principal. And then when you get to the next page, the only change on page 43 of the board book is where it says rule, it now says number 1, because we used to only have one rule, so we didn't have to have it a number. But now that we have a flow chart, that becomes rule number 2. And so when we are discussing this, you'll see it's the addition of naloxone and the procedures connected to that. It's also the change about bringing in documentation to the health office, as well as the changed numeral for Rule 1 and the flow chart. I think that's right.
You got it.
Okay. All right, I think let's take a motion, and then we will have any conversation that board members are interested in. Is there a motion, please? I think we can take all 3 of these recommended actions in one. Thanks, Mike. And a second? Thanks, Lindsay. Okay, questions or comments?
I have a couple of comments.
Sure.
First, I was really, really happy to see this Narcan added to our policy here. I think probably everyone in this room is aware of the exponential rise in overdoses due to opioid use, accidental oftentimes. And while I think nobody wants to imagine one of our students being in one of our school buildings, it's really important that we are prepared if a life or death situation happens in our building. So I think this is really, really important to do and an important step to protect our students. And then the other thing that I was struck by when I was reading through the edition, I was thinking about what it would feel like to be a staff member who raises their hand and says, I will be the one at the school to step in the event of an overdose. And it just struck me that we are really fortunate to have staff members that care so deeply about our students. And this is not something that any staff member probably anticipated having to be prepared to do when they signed up to work in a school building. And so I just think it's important to point that out and to recognize how fortunate we are to have staff members that care so deeply about our students.
Well said. We should also probably make sure that people recognize that if it's administered mistakenly, as that somebody thought that it was an overdose and it isn't, it does not adversely impact the person who receives it.
So will it be like stocked in the office? Is that kind of a, and will there be any training for staff?
Yeah,
Do you wanna talk about that? Yeah.
training is required. And we'll obviously keep the supply in a safe area. We can get the supply also, by the way, at no cost. The other reflection I have with all of this is, yeah, I'm glad we're doing it, but it's pretty sad that we're doing it too.
So sad.
And so I think in the best interest and safety of our kids, as you said, sometimes there can be, nowadays, you read and hear about other medications that could be laced unknowingly. A student could potentially be overdosed, and we're taking a precaution that we think is the right thing to do.
This use of Narcan, my wife is a nurse, and if there's some suspicion that a patient's going home and a family member may have overdose potential, that type of thing, they send the drug home. It's very widely prescribed. Not that it's sad, obviously, but it's not something that the school district is known at. It's pretty widely. I think the River Falls Library has it as well. So I mean, it's out there. So I'm glad we're doing it.
And will this be at the high school, Ren, and the middle school, or just that high school?
Policy will apply, the policy will apply at all of our schools to the extent that we have the naloxone available. We will have naloxone available at all of our schools as well.
And hope we don't need it.
And will there be multiple people trained? It sounds like if you can send it home.
Yeah,
It sounds like there will be multiple people.
Just add, so, Mark, our MERT teams have been trained in it, or most of our MERT teams have been trained in it, which are part of our teaching and support staff.
Medical Emergency Response Team, for those of you filling out your
And then we
acronym bingo
also-
card.
We also have it in our AEDs and our defibrillators. It's located in that grab bag. So if there's an unresponsive person at a basketball game or at parent-teacher conferences or whatever it might be to opioid or fentanyl use, that's automatically in that grab bag as well. It is as simple as giving a dosage of nasal spray, and it's as easy as that. So
So it's a spray, not an injection?
yes.
or a pill or something.
It's easily administered even without training, quite frankly.
But only certain staff members
Yes.
are cleared to administer it?
Yes.
Okay.
I see that.
Anything else? This is the first reading, and we have a motion that's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you, everyone. All right, we're going to schedule upcoming meetings. There will be no April meeting for the Educational Program Committee. Finance and Facilities will meet Monday, April 10th at 6 o'clock. The Personnel Committee will meet on Monday, April 10th at 7 o'clock or immediately following Finance and Facilities. The regular board meeting will be Monday, April 17th at 6 o'clock, and the board reorganizational meeting will be Monday, April 24th at 6 o'clock. All of those meetings are scheduled to take place here. So, what we did not have, I skipped over it. Do we have any proposed or suggested items? All right, you always know you can email me if you have something that comes up. So at this point, I'm going to say thank you to everybody for being here, and I'm going to request a motion to move into executive session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 1985 1C and E for the purpose of preliminary non-renewal of certified staff and to discuss contract negotiations with employee groups. Is there a motion, please? Thanks, Todd. Is there a second? Thanks, Ellen. I need a roll call. Mike?
Yes.
Lindsay? Bob?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
I'm saying yes. Cindy? Thank you. We are in executive session.
Just a few thoughts.